Hello there, this is AMN English. We're having a program Diplomatic Corner. The women said to have been abused worldwide, particularly in the continent of Africa and even in Ethiopia, just by the social media. So today I'm sitting with one of the female advocates, Facility Malfort. She presented the research about the online abuses. We're going to talk about women's empowerment in different sectors, particularly in diplomacy. Well, thank you, Felicity. First, tell us about what you're doing.
So my name's Felicity and I work on protecting and advocating for human rights around the world, specifically the rights of women. This is something I feel very personally about.
What's empowering women for you in just various sectors, including in politics and diplomacy?
I think it's essential for women to participate in public life, both online and offline, wherever they live in the world. You know, they make up 50% of the country here, but the same problems exist in other countries too, so it's a global problem.
Being a feminist is fighting for gender equality and women empowerment. If it is addressing the imbalance, if it is addressing the social justice, because I believe the women's issue is a social justice, if it is accepting that women's issue is the most cross-cutting issue than any other issues, if it is to say that we have to give them the voice, that they should participate in changing the world, then we agree on that definition. This is what we should be doing. So this is how I see it. And being the first female president here would obviously lead you to work more for other women to have the same opportunity. Don't elect a woman, but if you have a woman, then you open the door for a better, a better understanding, a better involvement on gender issues. We have to redouble our efforts. A young Ethiopian girl growing up here should know by now that this is possible. That if she has a dream to reach somewhere, she can do it, obviously. She should understand that she will have obstacles along the way, but if we join hands, we can remove them. She should understand that those of us sitting where we are today should not be the tree hiding the forest, that we should be working for the rest of women as well. So an opportunity for a woman should be opportunities for others as well. The Prime Minister has shown how he believes in gender equality, and that has to be now seen in deeds. And I think there is a good understanding that we should be moving that way. Well, in terms of gender equality again, I wouldn't say it's a resistance to those changes. I think we have reached a stage where people have understood that this is where we should be going. Now, between accepting and doing the right thing at every level, there is a gap to fill. So this is where we should be concentrating. Personally, I think that we need to have more women, educated women, more women in schools, primary, secondary, and then universities. We have a problem at some level where we have a lot of dropouts. We have to maintain them. So there is no change in our society if the 50% of it is not educated. So education is very important. And there, we have to have the right choices, which is not easy to bring, but we have that conversation. I think a door has been opened, a door of big opportunity, and it's for us to really seize it. You can have women at any level of decision-making positions and so on, but if you are not actively involved in politics, if you are not in political parties, if you are not elected, if you don't have that constituency as a support, your empowerment will remain limited.
In Ethiopia, for the first time in our history, have achieved gender parity within our cabinet and transferred key decision-making position to women, which is an exciting new practice. We have a female at the helm of the presidency. We have a female president of Supreme Court, the apex of our judiciary. This particular reform is rooted in the belief that making space for more women leaders is not just a move for the sake of diversity, but it is about doing the right thing.
How do you see Ethiopian government's efforts in empowering women? You know that the president of Ethiopia is a female, and half of the ministers are females, and other decisive positions are taken by women here. So how do you see that?
It's brilliant that women are represented in these forums, but it's important to ensure that women across society are represented in the online space and enabled to actually engage in those online spaces, because we need women across society to be talking about various issues for it to be a just society.
Now let me take you to the Center for Information Resilience, why it is established and what it is working for.
So CIR, we are the Centre for Information Resilience, and we work to combat disinformation and combat violations of human rights, particularly for women and minorities. All across the world, we have teams in all sorts of locations working on various projects, including here in Addis Ababa.
You've presented a study about the online abuse of women. So the study found that gender online abuse is silencing women, particularly in Ethiopia. So what does that mean? Tell us more about this.
So when we spoke to women in our first study, this was interviews with women in Ethiopia across various different sectors of society, from journalists to human rights advocates to politicians to lawyers. They were all saying that when they engaged with the online space, it was so toxic and so harsh, and the backlash was so severe that they would withdraw from these spaces. And in effect, by withdrawing from spaces, women are being silenced. You're no longer active in this space, so you're losing a whole percentage of the population because it feels unsafe for them to be there.
What are the damages inflicted to women?
I think it's really important to remember that harm in the digital space does leave that space. It enters the real world. So these harms are not just digital harms, they are real world harms. And it's not just psychological impacts, but many of the women we've spoken to have been threatened in the real world, from things like acid attacks to rape. You know, one woman, her children were even used in the abuse against her, and that's a hugely damaging thing psychologically for a mother. So the different types of abuse and the different impacts are quite broad.
Interviewing only 14 individuals, and have a conclusion in a country with more than 20 million people.
I understand your question exactly. However, that's why we looked at the second study. The first study was deep dive into the interviews with a few women to hear about the impacts, that personal experience, to understand what narratives are being used. We then thought, well, that's not quite representative, let's have a look at the broader social media trends, and that's why we did a quantitative study. The first study did inform our later work, however the second study is a standalone piece, and we looked at gender-based violence across Ethiopian social media.
In your presentation, you said that hate speech is misunderstood. So what does this mean, hate speech is misunderstood?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So when we talk about hate speech, most people think about really violent threats, really inflammatory, really hateful comments that, want harm on your physical security. But it's much more than that. Demeaning speech, insults, threats against family members, this is all hate speech as well. The use of stereotypes, suggesting that women are inferior to other members of society could count as hate speech because normalising inferiority is part of that problem. So hate speech is far broader than just what people immediately think of. These things that are considered less harmful are just as dangerous because they exist and they are normalised and therefore they become invisible.
For creating safe online environment for women particularly, what is expected from stakeholders, from the government, from the other segments of the society, including the woman? What is expected?
I think it's important to say that it's not just government that needs to act. Various stakeholders across society need to act on this issue. For government, we actually worked on recommendations. There are a lot of existing policies that are really good. It's about implementing them, providing the tools to those who have a mandate already to protect women and girls so that they can actually act on this. And working with organisations to develop future policies.
So what is expected from them also to intensify in just protecting the woman from abuse?
Absolutely. In our recommendations, we also look at social media platform accountability. There's several different things platforms are responsible for, including content moderation. And Ethiopia has, I think, 67 or more languages online alone. Now, there are not that many content moderators in Ethiopia across those platforms with language expertise. So it's about developing tools that they can use to better identify things that could be TF-GBV or other forms of abuse. The lexicon that we've developed, we're happy to share with platforms because we'd like them to be empowered to use these lexicons, which we've built with the community for hateful terms that could be indicative of hate speech in posts, and that could be used to flag hate speech or other abusive content for their removal. But it's also about removing faster. Certain things get flagged and then they stay up for months, and we saw that specifically on X around the time of recent conflicts. It's important to make sure things get removed in the right amount of time.
Any final message?
So a key thing in this event has been to bring together various stakeholders who are working on this topic. So during our event we have an exhibition with many CSOs, civil society groups, who are working on many of the recommendations we've suggested. So hopefully people can see all the different work that's being done, and there's an element of solidarity. Hopefully this message can be amplified and shared with others, that we all agree this is something that needs to be addressed urgently.
Felicity Mulford, I really thank you again for coming here and for giving me your reflections. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that's it for this week, Diplomatic Corner. Until we bring you another guest next week, have a good time.